Kang stepped onto the bridge of the peaceful dawn, his heavy boots making a distinctive thud that caused several crew members to flinch. 6 months aboard the Galactic Confederation's flagship, and still his alien colleagues couldn't help their instinctive reactions to his presence. He'd gotten used to it, the way the avian Krell would fluff their feathers in alarm, how the serpentine Valeth would lower their bodies closer to the ground, and the subtle way the crystalline Joran would dim their inner light when he entered a room. "Officer Kang," acknowledged Captain Tay, the elderly Krell who commanded the vessel. Unlike most of his kind, the captain had made efforts to control his instinctive fear of humans. Even so, Kang noticed the slight tremor in the captain's wing. "Tips. Your shift doesn't begin for another hour." "Couldn't sleep, sir," Kang replied, keeping his voice soft and his teeth hidden behind closed lips. He'd learned these small adjustments helped ease tensions, though nothing could fully erase what he represented to them: a predator, an evolutionary nightmare that walked upright and used tools. He took his station at the weapons console, the irony not lost on him. Humans were feared across the galaxy, yet this same quality made them valued in security roles. The Confederation had reluctantly admitted Earth into their alliance 50 years ago, recognizing that sometimes you needed a predator on your side. The bridge fell into uncomfortable silence. Kang caught snippets of whispers from a pair of Joran, officers nearby, their crystalline bodies tinkling softly as they spoke, only species known to hunt for sport. Forward-facing eyes of a true predator. Ancestors were persistence hunters who chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Kang pretended not to hear. The facts weren't wrong. Humans had evolved as pursuit predators on a planet full of dangers. What his colleagues failed to understand was how those same traits had shaped human compassion, their fierce protection of the vulnerable, their willingness to sacrifice for their community. The ship's communication officer, a younger Krell named Nari, suddenly straightened at her console. "Captain, incoming distress signal from Research Outpost Nexara 7. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a grainy image of a Valeth scientist, her scales dulled with stress. Static cut through her message. "Under attack. Unknown. Creatures, breach the perimeter. Need immediate evac. 14 survivors. Medical assistance required." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Captain Tay turned to his first officer. "Nexara is a Class 4 jungle moon. Environmental conditions?" "Atmospheric storms increasing in the region," reported the first officer, scales shifting color with concern. "Shuttle landing will be hazardous for the next 12 hours at minimum." Kang felt the weight of eyes on him before Captain Tay even spoke. "Officer Kang, your record indicates survival training in extreme environments." "Yes, sir. 3 years with the Earth Alliance jungle operations before joining the Confederation." The captain nodded slowly. "I'm assembling a rescue team. We can't wait for the storms to pass." Kang stood straighter. "I volunteer, sir." A ripple of discomfort passed through the bridge crew. June, the Joran navigation officer, chimed in with a sound like breaking glass. "Captain, perhaps it would be better to send an all-Valeth team. They're naturally suited to jungle environments." Kang saw the dismissal coming before the captain could voice it. It was always the same, his skills acknowledged, then politely declined. The unspoken truth: we'd rather risk mission failure than work closely with a human. But Captain Tay surprised him. "Officer June, the outpost reported unknown creatures attacking. In such scenarios, Officer Kang's unique evolutionary background may prove valuable." The bridge fell silent again, this time with a different tension. Kang caught the meaning beneath the diplomatic words. If something was hunting, the researchers sending a human, the galaxy's most efficient predator, made tactical sense. "Assemble in Shuttle Bay 3 in 30 minutes, ordered the captain. "Medical Officer Su, Tactical Officer June, Security Officer Kang, and Engineer Haru will form the rescue team." Kang acknowledged the order and turned to leave, catching sight of Medical Officer Su, a Valeth whose scales had paled considerably at the news she would be working closely with him. As the door to the bridge slid closed behind him, Kang heard the captain's voice. and may the stars guide you all safely back. Walking the corridors toward his quarters to gather equipment, Kang noticed crew members giving him an even wider berth than usual. News traveled fast on a starship. He was used to being the outcast, the necessary evil, the one whose very presence made others uncomfortable. What he didn't know was that this mission would change everything. Not just how the crew saw him, but how the entire Confederation understood humans, and it would start with the unlikely friendship between a feared human soldier and a small Volith girl who wasn't supposed to be on the rescue shuttle at all. The rescue shuttle trembled as it pushed through Nexara's upper atmosphere. Kang gripped, his harness tighter, watching as the vessel's external cameras showed storm clouds boiling beneath them, occasional flashes of lightning turning the gray mass into something alive and angry. Atmospheric turbulence increasing, Haru announced from the pilot's seat, her crystalline form reflecting the shuttle's warning lights in a kaleidoscope of colors. We're going to experience some rough patches. Across the cabin, medical officer, Sue checked her equipment for the third time, her scaled fingers moving with nervous precision. June stood nearby, his crystalline body chiming softly with each bump of turbulence. Have you ever been to Nexara before? Kang asked, trying to break the uncomfortable silence that had settled between them since takeoff. Sue looked up, her vertical pupils narrowing slightly. Once, 3 years ago. It's not a place one forgets. Dangerous? Kang asked. Beautiful, she corrected, then added, but yes, dangerous. The jungle there has evolved largely without predators. The plants are the true threats. No predators? Kang raised an eyebrow. Then what attacked the research station? Before Sue could answer, the shuttle lurched violently to one side. A blinding flash filled the viewport, followed immediately by a deafening crack that seemed to split the very air around them. Lightning strike, Haru called out, her voice unusually high. Direct hit to the port thruster. The shuttle began to spin, the artificial gravity fluctuating wildly. Warning alarms blared as smoke poured from a control panel. Kang unfastened his harness and pushed himself toward the emergency kit. Brace for impact, Haru shouted, fighting with the controls. Emergency landing protocols engaged. The descent became a blur of motion and noise. Kang managed to secure himself to a crash seat just as the shuttle broke through the cloud layer. Through the viewports, he caught glimpses of an endless green canopy rushing up to meet them. The impact came in 3 jarring stages. First the trees, which slowed their descent in a cacophony of snapping branches, then a bone-jarring bounce as they hit the ground, and finally a grinding slide through undergrowth before coming to rest at an angle that left the shuttle's nose buried in the jungle floor. For a moment, there was only silence and the gentle hiss of rain against the shuttle's hull. Then Kang's training kicked in. Sound off, is everyone all right? He called out, unbuckling himself and moving toward the others. Haru responded with a weak chiming sound. One side of her crystalline body cracked but still intact. June groaned from where he'd been thrown against a wall panel, but there was no response from Sue. Medical Officer Sue. Kang called again, scanning the tilted cabin. The Valeth's crash seat was empty, the harness torn free. Near the rear of the shuttle, where the hull had split open, rain poured in freely. She must have been thrown clear during the crash, June said, his voice tinkling with distress. We need to find her. Kang nodded, already moving toward the emergency supplies. Let's get what we need and start searching. The research outpost can't be more than 10 kilometers from here. As they gathered equipment from the damaged shuttle, the reality of their situation became clear. The communication array was destroyed, cutting them off from the peaceful dawn. Half their medical supplies were crushed, and the emergency beacon was functioning but weak, likely unable to penetrate the dense storm clouds overhead. The beacon will keep broadcasting, Haru said, limping slightly as they exited the shuttle into the pouring rain. But with these storms, I don't know if anyone will hear it. The jungle around them seemed to breathe, massive leaves collecting rainwater before releasing it in sudden waterfalls. The air was thick with moisture and the rich smell of soil and vegetation. Kang activated his scanner, sweeping it in a wide arc. I'm picking up Valeth life signs, he reported, But they're scattered. 2 distinct readings. 2? June's crystalline body flickered with confusion. That can't be right. Officer Sue was the only Valeth on our shuttle. Kang frowned, adjusting the scanner. 1 reading is about half a kilometer northeast. The other is fainter, maybe 3 kilometers beyond that, in the direction of the research station. Could one be from the station personnel? Haru suggested. Possibly. Kang peered through the rain. We should check the closer signal first. If it's Sue, she may need immediate medical attention. They made slow progress through the dense vegetation, the rain never ceasing, turning the ground beneath their feet into slick mud. June struggled the most, his crystalline form not built for such terrain. Kang found himself instinctively taking point, using his survival knife to clear particularly thick patches of underbrush. The scanner led them to a small clearing where a massive tree had fallen, creating a natural shelter beneath its upturned roots. As they approached, Kang heard something, a soft whimpering sound that cut through the steady drumming of the rain. "Hello?" he called, lowering his voice to seem less threatening. "Officer Sue, are you there?" The whimpering stopped abruptly. Kang motioned for the others to stay back as he crouched and peered under the tangle of roots. A pair of frightened eyes stared back at him, Valeth eyes, but much smaller than Sue's. "It's a child," he said, surprised. "A Valeth child." "That's impossible." June moved closer. There were no children reported at the research station. Kang reached a hand toward the frightened youngster. "It's okay. We're here to help." Slowly, a small-scaled form emerged from the shelter. The young Valeth couldn't have been more than the equivalent of an 8-year-old human child. Her scales were a lighter shade than Sue's, almost translucent in places, and one of her legs was twisted, at an unnatural angle. "My name is G," the child said, her voice trembling. "I'm hiding from the monsters." "G?" Haru moved forward. "Are you from the research station?" The little Valeth shook her head, wincing as she tried to move her injured leg. "I'm Officer Sue's daughter. I hid on the shuttle. I wanted to see the jungle." Kang's eyes widened as understanding dawned. That's why there were 2 Valeth readings, and why Sue seemed so nervous during the flight. She must have discovered her daughter's presence and unbuckled to get to her when the lightning struck. "Gee," Kang said gently, kneeling to her level. "Do you know what happened to your mother?" "She found me just before the crash," G replied, tears forming in her large eyes. "She put me in a storage compartment and told me to stay quiet. When the ship hit the ground, I was thrown out. I crawled. Here to hide." "You did very well," Kang assured her, carefully examining her injured leg. "We'll find your mother, but first we need to take care of this." As he worked to splint G's leg with materials from their emergency kit, Kang couldn't help but notice how the young Valeth watched him, not with the instinctive fear her species usually showed humans, but with curious trust. Perhaps children hadn't yet learned to fear what he represented. Night was falling fast, and somewhere in the darkening jungle, Officer Sue was either heading toward the research station or lying injured, unable to move. And beyond that, whatever had attacked the outpost was still out there, waiting. Night fell quickly on Nexara, transforming the jungle into a world of shadows and strange sounds. The rain had finally stopped, but water still dripped from the massive leaves overhead, creating a constant patter that masked other noises. Kang had fashioned a makeshift carrier from emergency blankets and straps, allowing him to carry Ji on his back while keeping her injured leg stable. "We need to find shelter for the night," Haru said, her crystalline form glowing softly in the darkness, providing just enough light to see a few steps ahead. "The temperature is dropping." Kang nodded, feeling Ji's small arms tighten around his neck. The young Valeth had been quiet since they'd started moving, occasionally making soft clicking sounds that reminded him of the distress calls he'd heard Valeth make when frightened. "Will we find my mother tonight?" Ji asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're going to try," Kang replied honestly. He'd never believed in lying to children, even to comfort them. "The scanner shows a Valeth life sign moving slowly toward the research station. If that's her, we should catch up by morning." June, who had been lagging behind, suddenly froze. His crystalline body dimmed almost completely. Something moved, in the underbrush, 20 meters back. Kang turned slowly, shifting Ji's weight to free one hand for his pulse pistol. The darkness beyond Haru's glow seemed absolute, but Kang's eyes, predator eyes, as his alien colleagues often reminded him, adjusted, quickly. He could make out shapes in the gloom. The subtle movement of vegetation that wasn't caused by wind. "We're being followed," he said quietly. "Probably since we left the crash site." "What is it?" Haru asked, instinctively dimming her light. "Can't tell yet." Kang carefully set Ji down beside June. "Stay with her. I need to check something." Before they could object, Kang moved silently into the darkness, circling back toward whatever was stalking them. His Terran military training had included modules on stealth movement, turning the human body into a ghost in any environment. As he crept through the undergrowth, he felt that familiar calm settle over him, the hunter's focus that was part of his evolutionary heritage. A snapped twig. A rustle of leaves. Heavy breathing. Whatever followed them wasn't particularly stealthy, but it was persistent. Kang moved closer, keeping low, until he could make out a shape in the gloom. A low-slung body, at least 2 meters long, with multiple limbs and what looked like ridged plates along its back. Suddenly, the creature raised its head and sniffed the air. Kang froze. Even in the darkness, he could see the moment the animal caught his scent. Its head swiveled directly toward him, and a low growl rumbled from somewhere deep in its chest. Then it charged. Kang rolled sideways as the creature barreled past, its claws tearing through the spot where he'd been crouching. As it skidded to turn around, Kang got his first clear look at their pursuer. 6 powerful legs, armored plates protecting its spine, and a wedge-shaped head filled with curved teeth. It looked like an unholy mix between a reptile and an insect, with glittering compound eyes reflecting what little light filtered through the canopy. The creature charged again. This time, Kang stood his ground until the last possible moment, then leapt upward, catching a low-hanging branch and pulling himself out of reach. The predator's momentum carried it several meters past before it could stop. From his perch, Kang aimed his pulse pistol and fired. The shot struck one of the creature's armored plates and dissipated with a shower of sparks. The beast roared, sound that echoed through the jungle, and reared up, revealing row after row of smaller claws along its belly. "Kang!" Haru's voice called from somewhere behind him. "What's happening?" He didn't answer. The creature was tensing to leap, its powerful hind legs bunching beneath it. Kang waited, timing his move. Just as the beast launched itself toward the branch, he dropped, landing directly on its back. The armored plates were slippery, but he managed to hold on as the creature bucked and thrashed beneath him. Reaching for his survival knife, Kang searched for a weak spot between the plates. The creature rolled, trying to dislodge him, crashing through undergrowth and small trees in its frenzy. Kang held on, waiting for his opening. There, where the head joined the body, the armor plates separated just enough. He plunged the knife, downward with all his strength. The beast let out a final shriek before collapsing, its 6 legs twitching before finally going still. Breathing hard, Kang climbed off the dead creature and retrieved his knife, wiping it clean on a broad leaf. As he turned to head back to the others, he froze. 3 more sets of compound eyes gleamed in the darkness ahead. "Not good," he muttered, backing away slowly. The creatures moved forward in perfect unison, their claws making soft clicking sounds against the ground. Kang considered his options. The pulse pistol had proven ineffective against their armor. Running might trigger a chase response. Fighting 3 at once was suicide. A light suddenly blazed through the trees. Haru, her crystalline body glowing at maximum intensity. The creatures hesitated, momentarily blinded. Kang seized the opportunity to dash back toward his companions. "Run!" he shouted as he reached them. June had already picked up Ji, the small Valith clinging to his shimmering form. They fled through the jungle, Haru's light guiding their way, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. Kang took up the rear position, ready to defend if the creatures caught up. Up ahead, he saw what looked like a clearing, perhaps enough open space to make a stand. But as they broke through the tree line, Kang realized it wasn't a clearing at all. The ground simply ended, dropping away into a steep ravine. Fast-flowing water roared somewhere below, invisible in the darkness. "We're trapped," June said, his voice chiming with fear. The creatures emerged from the jungle behind them, spreading out in a semicircle, cutting off any retreat. In the glow from Haru's body, Kang could see them clearly now. 6 legs, armored bodies, those terrible teeth, and something else. A faint pattern etched into their armor plates, too regular to be natural. "Those aren't natural animals," Kang said quietly. "They've been modified." Ji made a small, frightened sound, burying her face against June's crystalline shoulder. The sight of the terrified child triggered something primal in Kang, a protective instinct older than civilization. "Get behind me," he ordered, stepping forward to face the approaching predators. He ditched the useless pulse pistol and drew his knife again, holding it in a reverse grip. With his free hand, he picked up a heavy branch, testing its weight. The creatures paused, seeming confused by his behavior. In nature, prey ran or froze. They didn't advance toward predators, but humans had never followed those rules. On ancient Earth, humans had sometimes hunted lions, becoming predators of predators. "You want to know why the galaxy fears humans?" Kang murmured, though he knew his companions couldn't hear him. "This is why," the lead creature charged. Kang met it head-on, ducking beneath its snapping jaws and ramming the branch into one of its compound eyes. The creature shrieked and reared back, giving Kang the opening to slash his knife across the vulnerable underside of its throat. The other 2 attacked together. Kang rolled beneath one and came up behind it, jumping onto its back just as he had with the first. The third creature circled, looking for an opening. Behind him, Kang heard Haru shouting something, but the blood pounding in his ears drowned out her words. What happened next unfolded in a blur of movement. Kang dispatched the second creature with a knife thrust to the same weak spot where head met body. As he turned to face the third, he saw it leap, not toward him but toward Ji and the others at the ravine's edge. Without thinking, Kang threw his knife. It spun through the air and buried itself in the creature's eye. The beast crashed to the ground just meters from the others, its legs thrashing in its death throes. Silence fell over the ravine edge. Kang stood among the fallen creatures, chest heaving, hands empty. Only then did he notice the way his companions were staring at him, with expressions he'd never seen directed at him before. Not fear, not disgust, but something closer to awe. Ji was the first to move, limping toward him with June's help. The young Valeth looked up at him with wide eyes. "You saved us," she said simply. Kang knelt down to her level. "That's what humans do, Ji. We protect our friends." "Is that why everyone's scared of humans?" she asked. "Because you can fight like that?" Kang smiled sadly. "Partly, but they don't understand the most important thing. We don't fight because we want to. We fight because sometimes we have to." As dawn began to break over the jungle of Nexara, Kang felt something shift in his relationship with his alien companions. For the first time, they weren't seeing him as a monster to be feared, but as a protector, the very role humans had evolved to fill. Morning light filtered through Nexara's dense canopy as the group followed a narrow animal trail that wound through the jungle. Kang led the way, machete in hand, occasionally pausing to check the scanner. Ji rode on his shoulders now, her small scaled hands resting lightly on his head. The young Valeth had refused to be carried by anyone else since the previous night's encounter. "The research station should be just beyond that ridge," Kang said, pointing to a rise ahead of them. "And the Valeth life sign is there too, stronger now." "Mother," Ji whispered, her tail curling and uncurling with anticipation. Haru moved up beside them, her crystalline form sparkling in the dappled sunlight. "Kang, I've been examining the tissue samples you collected from those creatures last night." "And?" he asked, helping Ji down from his shoulders as they paused for a quick rest. "They're definitely engineered," Haru said, her voice chiming with concern. The base genome appears to be native Nexaround fauna, but there are modification markers I've only seen in high-level Confederation biotech labs. June, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the night before, suddenly spoke up. Are you suggesting someone at the research station was creating these monsters? The station's official purpose was botanical research, Haru replied. Nothing involving animal genetics. Kang frowned, memories of the distress call replaying. In his mind, the Voleth scientist had mentioned unknown creatures attacking. Had their own creations turned on them? We should approach carefully, he decided. If someone was running unauthorized experiments, we don't know what else might be waiting for us. They climbed the ridge slowly, using the thick vegetation for cover. At the top, they got their first clear view of the research station, a cluster of low buildings surrounded by a perimeter fence, much of which had been torn down or trampled. Even from this distance, Kang could see signs of violence: broken windows, doors ripped from hinges, dark stains on the outer walls that could only be blood. Life signs? June asked quietly. Kang checked the scanner. Multiple readings inside the main building. The Voleth signal is among them, but... He paused, adjusting the settings. Something strange about the other readings. They're fluctuating. Like the creatures from last night? Haru asked. Similar pattern, Kang confirmed. We need to get closer. They made their way down the slope toward the station, moving from cover to cover. As they neared the perimeter, Kang motioned for them to stop, pointing to fresh tracks in the mud. 6-legged creatures, larger than the ones that had attacked them. We're not going through the front, he whispered. There's a service entrance, on the east side. Looks less damaged. Leaving Haru and June to watch over Ji in a sheltered spot 30 meters from the perimeter, Kang approached the station alone. The service door hung partially open, its locking mechanism shattered. Drawing his knife, he slipped inside. The interior of the research station was cold and damp, emergency lighting casting everything in an eerie blue glow. Kang moved silently through service corridors, following the scanner's signal toward the center of the complex. As he approached the main laboratory, he began to hear voices. Project is a complete success despite your objections, someone was saying, their voice carrying a metallic quality typical of Zoran speech. Once we deliver the prototypes to our benefactors, the Confederation will have no choice but to recognize our superiority. You've doomed us all, replied another voice. Voleth female, exhausted. These creatures cannot be controlled. I've told you repeatedly their neural pathways are unstable. Kang edged closer to the partially open door, peering through the gap. Inside the large laboratory, he saw a group of Zoran, at least 5. Of them, their crystalline bodies pulsing with internal light in patterns he'd never seen before. In the center of the room, restrained on examination tables, were several Voleth researchers. One of them was clearly Officer Su, and in transparent containment units lining the walls were more of the 6-legged creatures, larger, more heavily armored versions of what had attacked them in the jungle. Dr. Su, the lead Joran said, moving toward her. Your expertise has been invaluable, however unwillingly given. The final batch requires only your genetic sequencing skills to stabilize. After that, your usefulness ends. I will do nothing more to help you, Tool, Su spat back. What you're creating isn't just unethical, it's an abomination against life itself. The Zoran called Tool made a sound like shattering glass. Laughter. Your moral objections are noted and dismissed. Perhaps you'll be more cooperative when we bring in your colleagues from the Peaceful Dawn. Our trackers have already engaged them. Kang felt a chill run through him. They knew about the rescue team, which meant he had to warn the others. Backing away from the door, he turned to retrace his steps and found himself face to face with a Zoran guard, pulse rifle aimed at his chest. The human, the guard said, voice echoing down the corridor. Intruder. Kang reacted instinctively. He ducked under the pulse rifle, driving his shoulder into the guard's midsection. The crystalline being stumbled back, off balance but not down. Before the guard could recover, Kang swept his legs and brought the hilt of his knife down hard, on the place where a Zoran's consciousness crystal was located. The guard went dark, collapsing in a heap of now lifeless crystal. but the alarm had been raised. Doors slammed open along the corridor as more Zhoran poured out. Kang ran, not toward the exit, but deeper into the facility. If he couldn't escape, he'd make them chase him away from where Haru, June, and Ji were hiding. He burst through a set of double doors into what appeared to be a genetics lab. Rows of cultivation tanks lined the walls, each containing embryonic versions of the creatures they'd encountered. Computer terminals displayed complex DNA sequences, rotating slowly on the screens. This was the heart of whatever twisted project the rogue Zhoran were running. Kang heard footsteps approaching. No time to examine the research further. He needed a defensive position. Overturning a heavy metal table, he crouched behind it just as the doors flew open and 3 Zhoran entered, weapons drawn. "Surrender, human," one called out. "You cannot escape." Kang remained silent, calculating angles, distances, probabilities. 3 armed opponents, unknown capabilities, limited cover. Not good odds, but he'd faced worse. The lead Zhoran stepped forward cautiously. "We know you're not alone. Tell us where the others are, and we might let you live as a test subject rather than dissection material." That was when Kang noticed something on a nearby counter. A small cylindrical device with warning labels in Confederation standard. A portable genetic sequencer, and more importantly, a power cell that could be overloaded. "I'll come out," he called, slowly rising from behind the table with his hands visible. "Don't shoot." The Zhoran kept their weapons trained on him as he stepped into view. Kang moved forward, eyes down, appearing defeated, then suddenly lunged toward the counter, grabbing the genetic sequencer and smashing it against the wall. The power cell inside cracked, immediately beginning to emit a high-pitched whine and glow with increasing intensity. "Containment breach!" one of the Zhoran shouted. "Power cell destabilizing!" In the moment of confusion, Kang vaulted over a workstation and crashed through a side door, running full speed down a connecting corridor. Behind him, the genetic lab erupted with a thunderous boom, the shockwave throwing him forward onto the floor, ears ringing, smoke filling the corridor. Kang pushed himself to his feet. The explosion would buy him time, but also eliminate any element of surprise. He needed to find Sue and the other prisoners, then get everyone out before the Zhoran regrouped. Following the scanner, he made his way back toward the main laboratory, encountering no resistance. All available guards must have responded to the explosion. When he reached the lab doors, he found them locked. Looking through the small window, he could see Tool hurriedly downloading data, while 2 guards prepared to move the prisoners. No time for subtlety, Kang muttered to himself, backing up a few steps. He took a running start and slammed his full body weight against the doors. The lock gave way with a crack and he stumbled into the room. The Zhoran reacted immediately, the guards raising their weapons. But before they could fire, the building's emergency system activated, sprinklers spraying down from the ceiling, alarm klaxons blaring. In the confusion, Kang tackled the nearest guard, wresting the pulse rifle from his hands and turning it on the second guard. Tool backed away, reaching for something on his belt. "You have no idea what you're interfering with, human," he said, voice cutting through the noise of the alarms. "This project will reshape the balance of power in the Confederation." "I've seen enough," Kang replied, keeping the pulse rifle trained on him while moving toward the restrained Valith. "These prototypes of yours killed my crew and attacked a child." A cold light pulsed through Tool's crystalline form. "A child? There were no children at this facility." "Not here," Kang said, reaching Sue's table and releasing her restraints. "On our shuttle." Officer Sue's daughter stowed away. Sue's head snapped up, her eyes wide with fear. G is here? On Nexara?" Kang nodded, helping her sit up. "She's safe for now, hiding with the rest of my team outside the perimeter." Tool made a sudden movement and Kang swung the rifle back toward him. Too late. The Zhoran had activated some kind of device and the containment units along the wall began to open with a hydraulic hiss. "If the child is out there," Tool said, backing toward a rear exit, "then she won't be safe for long. My beauties are always hungry." As the 6-legged creatures began to emerge from their containers, Kang made a split-second decision. He fired at Tool, the pulse blast catching the Zhoran in the shoulder, sending crystalline shards flying. Tool stumbled back through the exit door, sealing it behind him. There was no time to pursue. The creatures were fully awake now, their compound eyes focusing on the humans and Valeth in the room. Kang quickly freed the remaining prisoners. "Is there another way out of here?" he asked Sue, who was helping one of her injured colleagues stand. "Emergency exit." She pointed toward a red door at the far end of the lab. "But we'll have to get past them first." The creatures were spreading out, forming a semicircle around the group, just as they had done in the jungle. Their armored plates gleamed under the emergency lights, wet with the sprinkler water. Kang checked the pulse rifle's charge, nearly depleted after the shot at Tool. Not enough to take down all the creatures. He looked around desperately for anything that might help, his eyes falling on a rack of chemical containers near one of the workstations. "When I give the signal," he told Sue, "run for that exit. Don't stop for anything." Before she could argue, Kang sprinted toward the chemicals, drawing the creature's attention. He grabbed what looked like a container of flammable solvent, unscrewed the cap, and began splashing it toward the approaching predators. The lead creature leapt. Kang rolled aside, the massive body crashing into the chemical rack, sending more containers tumbling to the floor. As the creature turned for another attack, Kang raised the pulse rifle and fired his last shot, not at the creature, but at the pool of chemicals on the floor. The liquid ignited instantly, a wall of flame erupting between the creatures and the exit. The engineered predators recoiled from the fire, their compound eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "Now!" Kang shouted. "Run!" Sue and the other Valeth researchers rushed toward the emergency exit, Kang following close behind. As they burst out into the jungle air, one thought dominated his mind. He had to reach G and the others before Tool's remaining forces found them. And somewhere in the facility behind them, amid smoke and flame and the howls of engineered monsters, the truth of what the rogue Joran had been creating was still waiting to be fully revealed. 2 weeks after the rescue from Nexara, Kang stood at the viewport in his quarters aboard the Peaceful Dawn, watching stars streak by as the ship traveled at warp speed. His injuries had mostly healed. The claw marks across his back were still tender and his right arm remained in a sling, but the medical team had assured him there would be no permanent damage. A soft chime at his door pulled him from his thoughts. "Enter," he called, turning from the viewport. The door slid open to reveal Officer Sue, standing somewhat uncertainly in the corridor. This was the first time she had come to his quarters, the first time any crew member other than the human medical officer had voluntarily sought him out in his personal space. "Officer Kang," she said, her scales shifting slightly in what he had come to recognize as a Valeth expression of nervous respect. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," he replied, gesturing for her to enter. "How's G doing?" Sue's pupils widened slightly at the mention of her daughter. "Much better. The bone regeneration therapy is complete, and she's running around the ship as if nothing happened." She paused, fidgeting with her uniform sleeve. "Actually, that's partly why I'm here. There's a gathering in the Valeth community quarters tonight. G asked if you would come." Kang couldn't hide his surprise. "A Valeth gathering. I didn't think outsiders were allowed." "They aren't usually," Sue admitted. "But the elders have made an exception. You saved not only my life and G's, but also the lives of 5 of our leading researchers. The community wishes to express their gratitude." Kang hesitated. The Valeth section of the ship had always been off-limits to him, not by official regulation, but by the unspoken agreement that humans made the serpentine species deeply uncomfortable. "I wouldn't want to cause any distress," he said carefully. "There will be some discomfort, yes," Sue acknowledged with surprising honesty. "But that's precisely why this matters. What happened on Nexara has made many of us reconsider our assumptions about humans." An hour later, Kang found himself walking through corridors he had never visited before. The Valeth section of the ship had a different feel. The lighting was dimmer, the temperature noticeably warmer, and the air carried subtle scents of herbs that reminded him of Earth's deserts. As he approached the community hall, he heard music, a haunting melody played on instruments he couldn't identify. The doors slid open, and conversation within immediately ceased. Dozens of Valith turned to stare at him, their reactions ranging from obvious discomfort to wary curiosity. G broke the tension, darting forward from the crowd. "Kang, you came!" The young Valith practically bounced with excitement, showing no trace of her former injury. Without hesitation, she took his hand and pulled him into the room. "G," he chuckled, "careful with my arm." "Oh, sorry." She released him, looking genuinely contrite before brightening again. "Come meet everyone." What followed was the most unusual social experience of Kang's Confederation career. One by one, Valith researchers, engineers, and families approached him, cautiously at first, then with growing ease, to express their gratitude and, more surprisingly, their curiosity. An elderly Valith professor of xenobiology asked thoughtful questions about human protective instincts. A young technician wanted to know about Earth's predator-prey dynamics. Children, less constrained by learned fears, asked if they could touch his hair, fascinated by the concept of a mammalian body, covering so different from their scales. "They're studying you," came a familiar voice. Kang turned to find Captain Tay standing nearby, watching the proceedings with an unreadable avian expression. "Much as we've always studied humans, but with a new perspective." "Sir." Kang straightened instinctively. "I didn't expect to see you here." "The invitation was extended to senior officers," the captain explained. "I thought it important to attend." He gestured toward a quiet corner. "Walk with me, Officer Kang." They moved away from the main gathering, finding a relatively secluded spot near a decorative pool where small reptilian creatures swam in lazy circles. "The Confederation Security Council has reviewed all findings from Nexara," Captain Tay began without preamble. "The rogue Zoran faction has been apprehended, including Tool, though many of their research files were destroyed in the fire." "What were they trying to create?" Kang asked. "Those creatures weren't just weapons." The captain's wingtips fluttered slightly, a sign of discomfort. "According to what remains of their data, they were attempting to engineer the perfect predator species, one that would give the Zoran military capabilities similar to," he hesitated. "Similar to humans," Kang supplied quietly. "Yes." Captain Tay looked directly at him. "For centuries, the Confederation has regarded humans with fear. Your species evolved on a planet so dangerous that you became apex predators just to survive. Your bodies adapted for persistence hunting, chasing prey until exhaustion. Your minds developed pattern recognition so acute that you can predict behavior and see threats where others cannot. You became, in evolutionary terms, perfect killers." Kang remained silent, all too familiar with this assessment. "But what happened on Nexara has forced many to reconsider this narrow view," the captain continued. "The Zoran extremists created perfect killers, creatures with no empathy, no restraint, no capacity for anything beyond hunting and killing. The very traits they tried to replicate from humans were the ones they couldn't understand or reproduce." "What traits?" Kang asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Protection of the vulnerable, self-sacrifice, the capacity to control violent impulses except when absolutely necessary." Captain Tay gestured toward the gathering, where G was animatedly telling a group of Valith children what was clearly the story of their jungle adventure, complete with dramatic gestures. "That child was in no danger from you, despite everything. Our evolutionary instincts tell us. In fact, she was never safer than when in your care." A Valith server approached, offering them drinks in shallow bowls. Kang accepted one, nodding his thanks. "The Security Council has approved a new initiative," Captain Tay said after taking a sip from his own bowl. "A cultural exchange program starting with increased human presence on Confederation vessels. Your performance on Nexara has convinced them that the benefits outweigh the discomfort." "Performance, sir?" "Your actions," the captain clarified. "The way you protected not only your team but the research scientists as well. The restraint you showed when dealing with the Zoran captives afterward." He made a soft clicking sound, the Krell equivalent of clearing one's throat. "I've also submitted a recommendation for your promotion to security chief." Kang nearly spilled his drink. "Security chief?" But that position has never been held by a human on a mixed-species vessel. Perhaps it's time, Captain Tay replied. After all, who better to protect the ship than someone evolutionarily designed for that very purpose? Before Kang could respond, a commotion near the center of the room caught their attention. The Valeth had formed a circle, and within it, G stood with several other children. They appeared to be performing some kind of ceremonial dance, except G's movements were different, more aggressive, more human. "What are they doing?" Kang asked Sue, who had joined them. "It's the story dance," she explained, a note of pride in her voice. "An ancient Valeth tradition where important events are preserved through movement. G has choreographed a new one. She calls it the Human Protector." Kang watched, transfixed, as G enacted a stylized version of their jungle encounter, the Predator's approach, the moment of fear, and then a sequence where she mimicked his fighting stance, showing not the brutality of the battle, but the protective intent behind each movement. "She's been teaching it to the other children," Sue said, softly. "They used to play games where humans were the monsters to be feared. Now they play Human Protector instead." The music swelled as the dance reached its climax, G standing tall in the center of the circle, arms outstretched not in aggression, but in an encompassing gesture of safety. The gathered Valeth broke into their version of applause, a rhythmic tapping of tail tips against the floor that created a rippling sound throughout the hall. As the celebration continued around them, Captain Tay turned to Kang once more. "You know, in Krell mythology there is a concept called the necessary predator, a being of great power who uses that power only to maintain balance and protect the vulnerable. For centuries we've seen humans as simply predators. Perhaps now we can begin to understand the necessary part of that equation." Later that night, as Kang made his way back to his quarters, he passed numerous crew members in the corridors, Krell, Valeth, Joran, and others. Something had changed. The usual flinches, the subtle shifts to create more distance, the averted gazes. They weren't gone entirely, but they were diminished. In their place was something new: acknowledgement, cautious nods, and in some cases, what might almost be described as respect. At the intersection leading to the bridge, he encountered June, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since their return from Nexara. "Officer Kang," the Joran said, his crystalline form chiming softly. "I've been hoping to speak with you." "What about?" "I wanted to apologize," June said, his lights dimming slightly. "Before Nexara, I viewed you as, well, as something to be tolerated but avoided. I never considered that the same traits that make humans frightening could also make you the best possible allies." Kang smiled. "No apology needed. Those instincts evolved for good reasons." "Perhaps," June conceded, "but instinct shouldn't override understanding." He shifted, lights brightening. "I've requested to join your security team if you accept the chief position. I think there's much we could learn from each other." As Kang finally reached his quarters, he paused at the viewport, looking out at the stars streaming past. For the first time since joining the Confederation, he felt not just tolerated, not just useful, but truly understood. Humans were predators, yes. Their evolutionary path had given them teeth and claws, forward-facing eyes, and minds built for hunting. But those same traits had also given them something else: the capacity to become, when needed, the fiercest protectors in the galaxy. And perhaps, Kang thought as he watched the stars, that was a truth worth understanding.